Welcome to another edition of the Heron Outlet. She is Alex Winley. He is Austin Robillard. I am Ian Hest. And guys, we got the season off to a good start. At least that, right? We can enjoy a point. Maybe we could have gone for three in the end. There was some disagreement between goalkeeper and forward as to whether or not there was the ability to go for the goal or protect the tie. But that's understandable. An impressive performance for Inter Miami, a 0-0 draw in the home opener against the Chicago Fire. Let's start there, and just initial thoughts on what we felt that this season started a very different look for Inter Miami, not only in formation, but also in style of play, and something that they can really look forward to with an exciting view towards the future, I guess. I was impressed that throughout preseason, there was a very specific style of play, that this team is going to play that three at the back. They're going to play with the wing backs. They're going to play with maybe like a false nine, like a 3-5-2. We'll get into that coming up. But the idea that this has a very different feel with this team, that they know what they're doing. It's almost like Miami Heat-esque in that they have a style of play and you have to beat that style of play, whether you like it or not. Austin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it's refreshing, isn't it, Ian? Refreshing is the word that I would use to describe how I'm feeling about what I saw, especially everything that you just mentioned, the style of play that we are hoping to see consistent throughout the season. There's an idea, there's a tactical identity, which is not something Miami has had in their first two seasons. Identity is something identity, culture, everything, that's something that became, into the mix when Phil Neville and Jorge Mas spoke last season, and now they're kind of putting that into fruition now with this is now Phil Neville's team and everything like that. And I think that we're starting to see the benefits of that. We've got a 0-0 draw, right? The Inter Miami for the first time in their history on opening day have gotten a result. That's not something that's happened before. Remember the 1-0 loss to LAFC and the 3-2 loss to LA Galaxy. And now they come out of this home opener with a draw going into Austin, who yes has had a good game last week, but is probably a beatable team, and I think that the players will tell you that too. I think that this opening start, before we get into the real nitty gritty and tactics of it, this opening start is something that people can look at in a positive manner. And I've not seen a lot of negative thoughts about this, whether it's the fan clubs on Facebook or on Twitter or anything like that. It seems like there's some optimism about this team, and you got that. You didn't get that in the first two home openers, and now looking into 2022, it seems like even with 9 debuts, 9 starting debuts, 11 total, or 11 or 12 total debuts, Miami have a team that probably, hopefully, fans can be proud of throughout the season. I think that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. I that game was a bit. It started off slow. Probably nerves. And Neville mentioned in his post match conference that the guys were a bit nervous and maybe weren't sticking to what tactically he had for them. I think he mentioned that he wanted the center backs to have a bit more control of the ball, but they weren't doing that. So against a team like Austin, I know they beat Cincinnati 5-0 last week, but even though they did beat them, looking at the stats, Cincinnati did have their fair share of chances. They just didn't finish them. And looking at Miami, especially against the Fire last week, they had plenty of chances that they just didn't capitalize on. We'll touch on the Campana chances, during the game that he didn't finish, and Higuain supplying those. But yeah, I think this formation, it's going to take a while. Like you guys said, there's a lot of new players there, so it's essentially an expansion team. So yeah, it's just going to take time to gel, and hopefully against Austin, they'll be able to find that.
So I wanted to touch on Clement Diop and what he's going through as Nick Marsman is out. Phil had said previously before the season that it would be a miracle if Marsman was back before the end of March. So Diop is the guy going forward for now. But we have to say, I mean, he was man of the match. So there is a lot of good there. There is a lot to behold there. If you look at, I love my XG. And so the expected goals that happen was actually even 1.5 to 1.5. The Fire had a little more of that, so it was like a little bit into the negative. But Diop came up with some big saves in some important moments in the match. And again, like I mentioned, he was man of the match. We spoke with him after the match, and I thought that he was very impressive for his first game in an Inter Miami shirt, in an Inter Miami kit. So um, let's discuss him and what he was able to do and those big saves. It's obviously apparent when he steps on a pitch. He is extremely louder than most keepers, at least I've noticed. He commands a lot, and discusses and communicates a lot. And so I like his style. It's not necessarily that sweeper keeper that we've grown to known in the modern international game. It's a lot more traditional of a save type keeper. But what did you guys think about Diop's performance, and if this is sustainable, if this is consistent moving forward?
Yeah, I think that I will say, I know that we are talking about him as man of the match, but that was on that. I have to mention that was on the Inter Miami side. If you look at the MLS Team of the Week, his performance wasn't allegedly as good as the 17-year-old keeper's Gabriel Solina, who, by the way, yes, had a fantastic game and made
Which
some
I
huge
disagree
saves.
with, by the way, just for the record.
Yeah, no, I think that if Slonina was getting those shouts, Diop should have probably also been getting those shouts. And if he wasn't even close to making that list, then there's probably an issue. But yeah, I think maybe that's the U.S. men's national team bias with MLS, but it is what it is. There's a couple stories there. No, I think that Diop had a good game, and something that I really loved that Phil Neville talked about yesterday, as in Wednesday in training, was that incident with Gonzalo Higuain and Diop himself. Yes, Diop completely saved the game, made some saves that kept the game at 0-0. The last, I don't know if you guys remember the last time that Miami was at Soldier Field, but that game was 0-0 for a really long time, and then there was the John McCarthy blunder that made it 1-0. And now with a Diop as the backup, you're looking at a 0-0 game that stayed 0-0. And it's just funny that happened against Chicago twice, but I do want. I know you guys want to touch on it too. Is the incident at the end of the game with Gonzalo Higuain and Diop? 30 seconds left in the match. Diop gets the ball and holds it and takes his time, and Gonzalo Higuain is screaming to get the play on. And not only was Phil Neville asked about it, Diop was asked about it, and Diop basically said, "Look, my job as a goalkeeper is to not lose the game at that point. With 30 seconds left into added time, my job is to not lose the game. That's why I made that decision." And he understands Gonzalo Higuain's frustration while on the pitch because he's a winner, he's a goal scorer, and he wants to go out and win games. But he has a responsibility to not lose. And Phil Neville also talked about that, and basically saying that Diop is a true professional who took on the hard responsibility to make that decision, and that he believes at the end of the day, whether it looked 50-50 or not, was the right decision. And that's something that you really want from a backup keeper, especially a backup keeper, because you're not always expecting that. And the fact that he came on and took that responsibility and made the choice to do that, along with all the other saves and game-saving saves that he made in that match, shows what quality of a backup keeper that Inter Miami have right now and that they've not had in their history. Clement Diop is going to suffice for at least and through the end of March, and I think he likes it here in Miami, but if they didn't give him more than a one year deal, I think other MLS teams are going to try and poach him if Marsman's to stay as a starter.
Alex,
Yeah, not
I wanted to ask you about that because I found that response very interesting. The fact that we clearly could see from the press box that Higuain wanted to go, and Diop was like, "Oh no, we're gonna preserve the draw." Uh, where would you have fallen tactically in terms of which one would you have wanted to? I understand both sides of the coin on that. in terms of wanting to go for the win, getting that goal that was coming. I think objectively you could say they were on the front foot. They were moving forward. They were the more aggressive team, but then also making sure that you preserve the at least the 1 point that you were going to get. Where would you have fallen in that discussion? And uh, is it beholden, I guess I would say, for Diop to be the one to make that call? Or is it beholden for Higuain as the designated player to make that call? And which way would you have fallen if you were, let's say, Phil?
I would have gone for it personally. I think, it's soccer. You got to take chances. I know Diop wanted to preserve that draw, but Miami was on the front foot. Maybe if they got one last ditch chance on, Robert Taylor came on. He played well. Lassiter came on, provide that speed. Breck was on, provided that width. I think, yeah, I would have gone for it. Maybe just one punt. You never know. The ball could slip out of the goalkeeper, Chicago's goalkeeper's hands. Anything could happen. It's soccer, and plus Miami were on the front foot.
Can I
I
interrupt
would
you
have
on
gone
that real
for it.
fast? Can I interrupt you
Yeah,
on that real fast? Because my
yeah.
question to you is like, do you wonder on a punt, like second ball tactics, do you wonder that you can easily get like countered on that? If like second ball winds up happening, then all of a
Yeah,
sudden
but
you're in the back end.
I think yeah, I don't know. This season, the center backs are quicker, so I think that's a risk that you take at this point, especially at that point in the game. I know there is always a chance of getting countered, but at that time, I think there were what like 30 seconds left in the game. If even if they did get countered, just it's soccer. You just go and run back at this point. That's specifically why the roster was overhauled, so you can get younger and quicker. The guys are just plenty capable. If you know soccer's just a game of chances. You win or lose, and I personally would have gone for it, but I also see the upside about not wanting to lose the game at that time. Last season we did see Miami get countered plenty of times, so many times, in instances like that. So yeah, I can see both sides, but personally I just would have gone for it. But I can understand why Diop just wanted to calm the game down, not really give any stupid chances away, and see how to draw.
So, guys, there was like a huge change between the first half and the second half. And in a season opener that, is unlike any other, we talked all preseason long about how this was the first actual preseason that this club has ever gotten, especially with the pandemic and especially with MLS Cup is back and going to LAFC, which feels like a million years ago. But this team actually had a first preseason. There were a bit of nerves in the first half. Phil alluded to that, that there were the first 10, 15 minutes of the first half. They sort of settled into the game. The second half looked a lot better. And you had mentioned, Austin, with Ariel Lassiter and Robert Taylor, who you guys got to talk to this week. Um, the team sort of felt the game a little more. There was a comfortability, almost like a good blanket over them. They were towards the end of that game more on the front foot, more pushing forward, more excited for the possibility of a goal. Let's talk about the difference between the first and the second half. What did you see, Austin, in terms of the aggressiveness, but the not just the aggressiveness, but like the structure that they were able to have? Because it felt like they really found a way to understand responsibilities and roles a lot better.
Yeah, I'm pulling up a tweet right now that I put on in the first half because I think that it kind of explains it perfectly. Um, if I can find it here. This was it right here. This is what I said. I said, I struggle to see how the sit back and counter approach will end up working for Miami without Lassiter or Emerson up top. There's no in behind vertical threat to play direct balls to, so the build up play on the counters is taking far too long, allowing Chicago to recover. And in the first half, we saw that Miami was giving up a lot of possession. I think they gave up over 62% possession from the Inter Miami stats that we got at halftime. And I think that that's okay. I think that is completely okay because They did give up a couple of chances, but at the same time, they were still creating chances. You said the XG numbers, I believe, in both half are pretty similar. Miami had the edge in the second, a little bit less of the edge in the first, but it seemed to me that the play would just become stagnant at times when they were trying to counter after finally winning the ball. And I think that had to do with some build up play from the back that Phil Neville talked about. The center backs in the first half weren't making, they were struggling to play out the back, making those simple passes. He said he talked to Quinteros about playing the pass to Yedlin, things like that, getting the ball to the pacey players. With Campana and Higuain up top, with Mo Adams and Gregory and Jean Mota in the midfield, who aren't going to advance the game as much as a Robert Taylor would, per se, it's hard to have this fast, direct one route style attack that we talked about in preseason that we saw firsthand against DC United. It's hard to have that without Ariel Lassiter on the pitch. Campana and Higuain, granted, have the technical ability to be great players, and we know that. I mean, Higuain, of course, speaks for himself, but Campana did get himself in good opportunities, but he doesn't have the pace to be a number 9 on a counter attack that needs to move the ball fluidly and fastly. It's just his pace is not there. That's not the kind of striker that he is. So is Phil Neville trying to be this, let's tire out the first half, tire out the players in the first half and then bring on our pace in the second half? And I actually did ask him about that yesterday. I said, what kind of weapon is it like to have Ariel Lassiter come off the pitch or come onto the pitch with 30 minutes left? Because for me, as much as Chicago were controlling the game in the first half, it changed completely. And obviously it was credit to Robert Taylor as well, who was forcing the issue. But Robert Taylor wasn't in the midfield. Mo Adams was, Jean Mota was, and Gregory was. The difference between Mo Adams and Robert Taylor was massive. Robert Taylor is taking the ball from the halfway line or even a little bit before, running into green space, going face to face with a center back. Ariel Lassiter is making runs in behind center backs and making Gonzalo Higuain give him the ball. And I think that the lack of that in the first half was extremely evident. However, they didn't concede anything, so it didn't seem that bad. But there were chances for Chicago, and it just seemed to me like the attack needed a little bit more spice, for a lack of better words. It needed something that could, have just a spark, maybe. And Emerson could be that guy. Ariel Lassiter could be that guy. Taylor could be that guy when he becomes fully fit. I mean, even George Acosta putting him in on the midfield could be that guy to play better passes, whether it's to Higuain up top if you need to put him there. So that's kind of just my take on it. Obviously the second half was better than the first, and I don't think the first was bad. I think that this was a style that Phil Neville wanted. I think the game played perfectly into his hands. They just couldn't get the result at the end of the day, and I think that that's okay. By the way, and it falls into the Diop thing too. I do agree with Clement Diop. Personally, I think that was a good decision. Because of the second ball tactics, Ian. A punted ball going down the field, you have no idea where it's going to end up, and I don't really trust Gonzalo Higuain to jump up against the center back at this point in his career. It's there was definitely an imbalance between first and second half, but I don't think either of them were that bad. I think the tactics just need to be worked on a little bit, or player profiles and how they fit into the games. But maybe this was all a part of Phil's plan, and it could be that way going forward.
Yeah, and I think I touched on this in a piece I wrote. I think when you want to play these long ball tactics, I understand having two big center forwards up top in Campana and Higuain, but when your center backs, they didn't control the ball, they weren't playing through the middle, and when you don't have that, when you don't have the possession through the middle, it's hard to you know, Higuain, he likes to get on the ball. So when Miami's not controlling the middle, it's hard for him because you're just going to spam long balls over the top. And while Campana can get to them, Higuain, he's probably not going to jump up to get to them most of the time. So, in order to sort of fix that, you put on a guy like Lassiter who will just run in behind and try to cause problems with the opposition defense. So I can understand starting Campana, and I like Campana as a player. I'm not giving up on him or anything. It's just different personnel for different teams and different opposition. Basically, I think especially with Austin, I was able to rewatch their game against Cincinnati. There were times where they were sort of susceptible on the counterattack. So maybe starting a Lassiter, at the beginning instead of maybe bringing him on at the 60th minute will, they, do a better job than, Campana would. And, if you're able to nick a goal in the first 20 minutes and just keep a hold of that lead and then bring on like a Campana who can hold up the ball a bit more and keep more of that possession, maybe it'll work. But yeah, I think it's just down to tactics and working through that. But I want to touch on Mo Adams. I really like Mo Adams as a player, but uh, he didn't, you know, throughout preseason he was injured and coming back from an injury. So to throw him in the first game of the season when he didn't really have much of a preseason, I think he played in one or two games. It a bit unfair to him, and he did look off the pace the first 30 or 40 minutes of the game. So, maybe starting a guy like Acosta would have been a better deal than Mo Adams. But I see why um, Neville started Mo Adams because you had a guy like Shaqiri on and he was finding those pockets of space, and Mo Adams was man marking him pretty well. So, yeah, I just think it's entirely dependent on which team Miami plays and what type of tactics you want to go for. I do think Campana will start during the weekend, and Lassiter will probably come on, and same thing with Taylor. But yeah, I just think it depends on the team and the tactics. But yeah, what Austin said, it's basically at the end of the day down to the center backs to just play through that press. Find the wing backs and play those diagonal balls to the center forwards.
I wanted to touch on that, Alex, because Mo Adams did do a very good job defending Shaqiri, and I don't think that we've talked about that enough. I mean, his xG was zero; it was completely zero. He did not get a shot off. His XA, his expected assist, was only zero point 0.6, and that was that one chance that he got to Przybylko. So like they did a very good job of shutting down Shaqiri. Sometimes he got into that left wing. We saw that, and that was a little bit difficult, but that's something that you can fix as a first game of the year thing. I wanted to go back to Campana and what you were talking about there, because he really had two very good shots. That the XG on it was 0.89, which means like one of those two should have resulted in a goal almost 90% of the time. They were very good goal opportunities, shot creating opportunities that we hadn't seen very similar things in previous iterations of the lineup, whether it be last year or the year before under Diego Alonso. So uh, I liked the creativity. I liked the excitement. The last finishing opportunity, it wasn't there. So you sort of go, Alex, as I bring this to you, you sort of go to this idea of, is finishing going to be a problem? Or is this just cobwebs, first game of the season? We don't know what we've got yet, and we're trying to create opportunity.
Yeah, I think first game of the season. I think once they get into late late March, early April. Oh, I was about to sneeze. Sorry, late March, early April. I think you're gonna see that rust kind of fall out. I know. Like I said, I like Campana as a player. He brings a different dynamic compared to previous number nines Inter Miami has had. In past seasons. It just comes down to the repetition and getting that rust off. I think he'll get one eventually. We saw in preseason against Charlotte, he's able to finish. Campana is so. I just think it takes time, and there's a lot of new players on this roster, so it obviously is going to take time, but. From what we saw against Chicago, there are definitely encouraging signs. Especially in the latter half of the second half. The guys were pushing. Taylor came on, Lassiter came on. Breck Shea came on, and it was a really good performance from them. So I think once everyone is fit and ready to go, I think Neville will have more options and more, personnel flexibility to switch up his tactics a little bit, whether he does want to be more possession based or counterattacking based. It's just rust. And as someone who played soccer myself, it does take a while. So yeah, I think it'll come eventually. So not too concerned, but against Austin at the weekend, I think it'll do them a bit of good if they could maybe finish one or two of those chances.
Austin, let's talk about Higuain's role. I want to bring up some stats that just blatantly change what Higuain was doing against Chicago as opposed to last year. I mentioned he did not take a single shot for the first time in his 40 games with the club. His expected assists for that game against Chicago was 1.0 in 2020. His XA cumulative for all 9 games that he played was only 1.3. In 2021, in all 30 games, was 4.7. So he clearly, I mean, he took 4 corners, took none in 2020, 16 all of 2021. He had 5 crosses, 4 in 2020, 19 in all of 2021. So clearly a different role for him, finding these pockets, finding the way to bring the ball in and set other people up. Do you like that role for him? He's clearly not expected to score as much, but that was the crux last year, was when Higuain didn't score, Inter Miami didn't get results. Well, this year it seems like he's not going to be asked to be that 20, 25 goal guy, and instead to be the facilitator for them. We talked at the end of last year about finding a number 10 to be Higuain's number 9. Well, instead, it seems like Higuain's going to be the number 10 to facilitate a number 9, and almost like an inverse role. Do you like that? Is that going to work? Is this team going to score enough goals for that to work?
Yes. I think that this is the right idea on how to utilize Gonzalo Higuain and his talents at this point in his career. Obviously, he is a known goal scorer and did great things over in Europe. But in MLS, the first 2 years, I think he scored 12 last year, if I'm not mistaken, which is a good number. But I think that he still had this. There was no stopping Gonzalo Higuain last year from dropping back. It happened and happened and happened again. And I think that Phil Neville finally just said, you know what? Let's embrace it. Let's embrace it. Go find a striker. Go find another, winger or another attacker that can play off of this deep lying Gonzalo Higuain. And that's exactly what they did with the signings of Lassiter and Emerson and Campana. I think that they're kind of just embracing what Higuain wants to do, what he thinks he can do. And I think with him as the number 10, it has potential to be not only good, but great. And we saw that specifically past the 74th minute in the Chicago game when Ariel Lassiter and Robert Taylor came on. There were a couple of balls that Higuain played that I was amazed by, like absolutely amazed. One of them specifically to DeAndre Yedlin, where he ended up getting into the byline and couldn't get a shot off. But there was also one to Ariel Lassiter, maybe 2 minutes after he came onto the pitch, that put him through, but he just had a little stumble going towards goal. I think that there is real potential for Gonzalo Higuain to be a really good number 10. He just, I think you guys just spoke on it. It's that final product. Where is that actually going to come from? Because now you're not saying we're going to rely on Gonzalo Higuain in the box. And Phil Neville said a lot of that last year too. He said, we know where Gonzalo is best at, and we know where he's been best at his entire career. We want him to get inside of the box and get him opportunities there. They failed to do that in 34 games. He still scored 12 goals, but I think that it was still a failure of trying to do that. Now let's embrace the role of him as a number 10 and get other people those chances. Like you said, Campana got a couple, Ariel Lassiter got a couple. There's still time for this to be worked on, and I think it has the potential to be really good. And they've brought in hopefully the right players to be able to build off of it.
Yeah, and looking at Higuain's stats, he had 7 key passes, which is crazy. That's highest out of anyone on the field that day.
Including
Created two.
Shaqiri, Alex? No way.
Yeah, yeah, more than yes, more than Shakiri. Who? Yeah, more than him. He had 2 big chances created. Yeah, he had a pretty decent match, although everyone's passing percentage, except for Egoing completed 82% of his passes, which is pretty good. So this formation, I think mainly it's down to Egoing, tendency to drop deeper. I think if Miami played with a 4-2-3-1 like they did last year, it would look very lopsided and not very good, especially with you know let's say they play a 4-2-3-1 with Lassiter as a winger, and then I don't know who would start on that right hand
They're
side,
not
maybe
playing a
Robert
4 2
Taylor.
3 1. They're not playing a
Yeah, I
4.
know. Yeah, I know. This is just hypothetical. If they were still playing that 4-2-3-1 and Egoin was dropping deeper, it would just look really lopsided. So, this current formation that they're playing, the 3-5-2, 3-4-3, it works for Higuain. He's able to drop deep, and there's able to be a center point, center forward, whether it be Campana, Lassiter. You get the width from the wing backs, and you've got the midfield stability with the three midfielders or two double pivots in a 3-4-3. So, yeah, and it showed against Chicago. Like I said, Higuain had seven key passes in that match, and I don't think that would have happened if Miami was playing in a 4-2-3-1. Like I said, it would look lopsided. So yeah, Egoin, this formation, it's solely to get the best out of him, and so far it appears to be working. Now, is this sustainable throughout the season? Who's gonna score? The Chicago game, Egoin, he didn't shoot too much, so yeah, that's the big question, where the goal is going to come from, and if preseason's any indication, Lassiter will chip in, Campana will chip in, maybe a fullback will chip in, a central midfielder. So goals are going to have to come from other places on the pitch. But so far, this formation, it works for what Inter Miami's trying to do, and hopefully they can replicate. Higuain can replicate that seven key pass performance this weekend against Austin.
Austin, real fast, just like, do you think that that is out of age or out of want to, or like why would he, I guess, like, give up that goal scoring responsibility that he had?
Um, I think that it may be a little different this year than it was the last 2 years. I think the last 2 years it was almost off of instinct because he didn't feel like he was getting the service that he needed, so he put himself on the ball in any scenario that he could. As for 2022, I think Phil Neville realized that and said, you know what, you're right. I don't know if there are enough players up to your stature in this league or on this team. Let's try and get you on the ball as much as possible to facilitate the offense and do that. And it's not that Gonzalo Higuain can't be a great goal scorer. And maybe it does have to do with age. Maybe it has to do with want. It could be a lot of things. But I think at the end of the day, it was due to his instinct in the first 2 years, and then also the fit for this team right now and the formation and style they want to play, as Alex just alluded to.
You guys got the chance to talk to Robert Taylor, Ariel Lassiter this week, and really get their insight. A great super sub opportunity for both of them against Chicago Fire, and impressive performances. I thought both performed well in their Inter Miami official season, regular season debuts. And so, what did you hear from them that really makes you, Alex, I guess, that makes you feel confident that you had mentioned maybe starting one or if not both of them? Where does that affect the starting 11 and the formation of the team, and what you heard from them on how they fit in with this squad?
Yeah, I think Robert Taylor, especially, he wanted to come to Inter Miami. Speaking with him yesterday, he was really hell bent on coming to the league and joining a project like Miami. He really wants to go and play basically, but Neville is he's not fully fit. So Neville, as a coach, he's not going to throw him a player in when he's not fully fit, and then he gets injured and he's out for a month or so. So yeah, Robert Taylor, he's he's hungry. He really wants to contribute and just sort of help the team. Lassiter the same way. He's hungry and he wants to play and he wants to contribute. So both of those guys, I think, whether or not they're super subs, going back to the earlier conversation, I think it depends on the opponent. And Neville said it himself. Sometimes Higuain, Lassiter, and Taylor will start, and he even threw Robbie Robinson in there. Some games that all three of them will start. Some games, it'll be Lassiter and Higuain. Some games it could be Campana, Lassiter, and it's just crazy that Miami have these options now. So yeah, I think it's just down to tactics, really. I think it's down to tactics and the opposition, whatever they're playing. Certain opposition teams require different players and different formations. So not formation, different personnel, I should say. Excuse me, but yeah, it just it's a difficult job, I will say. Personally, there's everyone wants to play a certain way. I know Neville wants the team to play a certain way. So yeah, it's just down to the opposition. It's down to uh, um, what players can hurt the opposing team the most. Against Austin, like I said a couple minutes ago, they're susceptible to getting counterattacked in behind basically. So that's where I would start a Lassiter, but I do see Campana starting, maybe bringing in Lassiter as that super sub in the 60th minute when everyone's tired and you need that burst of energy. So um yeah, it'll be tricky, but I think that's what Miami will stick with at this point.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to touch on what Ariel Lassiter said and something that also Phil Neville said. Lassiter, I think that his Houston Dynamo experience is going to prove to be really good because he has an idea of these Western Conference opponents. And when talking about Austin FC, he seemed like he knew how to get at them. Like he just had this idea in his head that he knew what he would have to do in order to score goals if he was on the pitch. You can watch the media scrum that we had with him on the Heron Outlet YouTube channel. A little bit of a plug there. Um, so if you wanted to do that, you could. And he discussed the idea of slower center backs and him using his pace to get in behind. And I also asked him, I think it was just briefly after that, how do you, your relationship with Gonzalo Higuain? And he talked about how that played a perfect part into trying to play out those tactics on the pitch and him trying to use his speed to get in behind while they focus on Gonzalo Higuain and they're getting too compact. He just wants to break the lines. And he thinks that he can do that against Austin FC. And I don't doubt that he can do that against Austin FC. So I'm curious to see what Phil Neville does with the starting lineup going into that. But before we do that too, another interesting thing that Phil Neville said in terms of this super sub kind of conversation was that when he goes into a match, he's not looking to name a starting 11 anymore. It's naming a 16 because he's utilizing all five subs. He's planning to utilize all five subs, and all 16 of those players have a job to do on the day. And he is going to ask something of every single one of those 16. And I think that that's why this attacking depth that they have now, we haven't even seen Emerson play yet, but we know his technical ability and what he can do. We now know what Lassiter can do. We now know what Robert Taylor can do. We know what Robbie Robinson can do on his day, and he's not fully back yet. But there are players now to be inserted in the front lines that are going to keep opposing defenders thinking, keep them on the back foot. And I don't know if that was always a in the realm of possibility in the first two seasons that Inter Miami has had thus far. And I think it's pretty important in terms of longevity and trying to be consistent throughout the MLS season.
Yeah, and I think going back to your point, I think Lassiter is talking about how he's played against Austin. When he was a Dynamo player, I think that experience will certainly help. Miami's never played Austin before, so the more experience you can get, the better. I think Austin. Look, we keep saying this, but they beat Cincinnati 5-0, but Cincinnati had their chances. Austin looks susceptible to counterattack, so I think that's why I'm leaning more towards potentially starring Lassiter, but I don't know if Neville will go that route. I think he'll stick with Campana in the Higuain partnership, see how that goes, and I think by the 60th minute we'll probably see Lassiter and Robert Taylor again.
I think it was Tom Bogert from MLSsoccer.com that said that Inter Miami started 9 players that were not on the roster last year, and 11 of the 14 that appeared in the match were not a part of Inter Miami in 2021, which is astonishing if you really think about it. So that transitions me to Inter Miami's biggest new U.S. men's national team player, which is DeAndre Yedlin, who really blew me away. I was tremendously impressed with his pace, his aggressiveness. Not only that, his defensive style, that he could find his way back into his shape. He looked like the DeAndre Yedlin that we all thought of old, and it's stunning to think that he's still in his 20s and is still able to have that pacing and perhaps this run that he could have here in Inter Miami. Guys, what did you think of DeAndre Yedlin? Probably should have had a goal at one point. I liked that. It was early in the second half that, if I'm remembering correctly, that he had a very good opportunity that I, just coming in. We were talking about Ariel Lassiter. That partnership could wind up being extremely interesting on the right side, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it screams pace. Those guys are so fast, especially DeAndre Yedlin. And it's not like he tired out either. That's the thing. Like, this guy is still in the prime of his career. And they got a DP signing for allocation money, first of all. He's also only 28 years old. And I think that this signing even, I know it didn't go under the radar, but maybe it did go under the radar. Does that make sense? It's a little bit understated for how good of a signing it can be.
Let me
There's
ask you real
so much.
fast. Let me ask you real fast, right? Because Christian McCoon started for Charlotte, right? That trade was what allowed DeAndre Yedlin to be signed. At the end
Right.
of the day, you look at it and I mean, from what you saw on last Saturday, you just go, I mean, we all loved Christian McCoon. That this is no disrespect to him, but what you saw on Saturday, you go, duh.
Of course. And I think that you've, in almost every single situation, you say, yeah, duh. But if they didn't bring in, let's say, Lowe, Quinteros, McVeigh, do we still say the same thing? I don't know. That would be, that's just a hypothetical, but I think that they played it right. That's what Chris Henderson does. He played it right, got the center backs that he wants that will fit into this team, and then went and got a star right back who is sprinting 40, 50 yards up and down the pitch 75 minutes into the match and almost winning a penalty there in the second half. Great diving technique, by the way. I mean, there's there's just so much to be said and so much to like about DeAndre's game. Miami, I think we've talked about it before, have not had a right back to this caliber in their history, and DeAndre Yedlin is a complete game changer.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, I want to say that the diving part. Yeah, I don't know. We didn't get a replay, but from our vantage point, it looked like there was contact, but the penalty wasn't given. But yeah, Yedlin, mm, the biggest acquisition Miami made this offseason. I think against Austin, he'll be super important. Austin play in a 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1. So I know when either Juicy or Cecilio Dominguez, they tuck in, they'll leave space in the behind, and I'm not sure if they're ones to be tracking back as often. So if Miami can exploit that on that right hand side, which will be Austin's left, they could be in for a good afternoon. So Yedlin, even though he came straight from Turkey, we saw in preseason he was up and ready for the challenge, and against the Fire, he was sprinting and he was defending and he was flying into tackles, and at times it was a little bit scary because I think he picked up a yellow card at one point, but for the dive, which is MLS refs, but it's just really cool to see that because Miami has always struggled with right backs from the beginning of the franchise's inception. So to have a player like Yedlin, and he'll be here for what, 4 years plus one. It shows his commitment and his commitment to the project. And this weekend I think it'll be really important for him to continue to showcase that quality. And against an Austin team that's can be a bit open and behind, it'll play advantage to Yedlin and his skill set.
I know we hate ref talk, but that ref was understandably kind of like a rookie. I think he was refing his seventh game professionally in that, and it showed. And that's okay. Everybody has to start somewhere. We started on our first podcast whenever we did, and we got better over time. That's how it happens. From one Austin facing head to head with Inter Miami to a head to head matchup I want to have with our Austin. Uh, we disagree on Jairo Quinteros and his performance in the Chicago Fire game. The floor is yours. I will let you start, and I will rebuttal off of that because I know that you and I have the numbers say differently than the eye test, and so I just want to give you the opportunity to say what you saw.
I saw a lot in the first half. I will say he grew into the match. Okay, I think that Quinteros showed potential to be a good center back, especially with cover. However, it did not. His here's a comparison I'll make to put my thoughts into your head. Do you remember last season when we discussed Christian McCoon's passing range in the beginning of the year before he grew into the player that he was? That kind of reminded me of Jairo Quinteros in the first 45 minutes. And I think that there were nerves, of course. It was the first match of the season, and I will give that excuse for now. But there were times where it just looked extremely, extremely shaky on a LGP Figal going forward passing esque type. Like it was there for me, and the way he lost the ball in certain situations was not good and was not beneficial to this team. Asked DeAndre and Damian Lowe to do a lot of recovery work in that first half, especially Damian Lowe, who, by the way, congratulations on your MLS Team of the Week performance. Um, I think Quinteros, like I said, grew into the match. Second half, basically not noticeable. Nothing he did on the offensive side of the ball was noticeable to me in a bad way or in a good way. He was kind of just there, kind of what I thought of Christopher McVey in preseason. And less said about the center back sometimes, the better, right? I don't think that he had a particularly good performance. I believe I did a ranking on my Twitter and I put him on the bottom of all the debutants who came on. And I will still stand by that. I think that there were a lot of better performances than his. And maybe it's just being hindered by his first half performance and how many times he lost the ball and could not find DeAndre Yedlin on the flank. But even with, another way to try and prove my point here, DeAndre Yedlin's best half was in half one or in half two on the offensive side of the ball. Clearly, it was half two. And that was because he was able to get on the ball going forward. And a lot of that build out of the back kind of stuff from Phil Neville was Quinteros, get Yedlin the ball. Get Yedlin the ball. And he failed to do that in the first 45 minutes. And obviously, it's been addressed and it has been talked about, not only between them, but he also said it to the media. And it grew on in the second half, sure, but I think that Quinteros has a lot of work to do. And for me, I'd like to see Mabika in the starting lineup until Quinteros can get on his feet.
Okay, so I'm gonna give the rebuttal, which is it's obviously stat based. It's obviously doth my eyes lie to me, basically. That we see things that we think, okay, what's going on here? And maybe this doesn't look as good, but when you put it on paper, all of a sudden it does look good. He had tied for the most tackles on the team in the entire game, tied for the most block shots throughout the entire game. He had 3 interceptions. He had 10 pressures. There are things that are exciting about it. Yes, the passing, I will concede to you, the distribution was not there. And that is the point of contention where Mabika will be a lot stronger. Also, the aerials one, Mabika will be a lot stronger than Quinteros will be. But I think in terms of just let's wonder what we're asking him to do, because I think what we're asking Quinteros and McVey to do is to be that sort of like, for lack of a better word, like siege around the side to like hold the fort, and Low to be the clearance and the distributor that is going to send it out to the wings. And in that regard, I think he did. You don't need to call it a good job. He was one of the higher rated players at the end of the match. But in that regard, if that is his role, I think that he accomplished what his role was. I'm not asking him to be LGP. I'm not asking him to get forward. I'm asking him to hold the fort and to make sure that we're protected on all sides. And in that regard, I think that he accomplished what he was asked to do. Was it clean at times? No. But I do think it accomplished what it was asked to be accomplished.
I Yeah, I get that. But now I'm just gonna shift the not the whole full conversation, but if that's their jobs, and now I'm gonna look at Christopher McVay and say, how many times was Christopher McVay towards the end of the first half beaten by I don't remember his first name, but Ivanov, number 99 for Chicago. How many times did he get in behind and find chances? Granted, McVay is playing next to a 17-year-old debutant in Noah Allen, who defensively had a probably 17-year-old performance, but I think that for both of those guys now that we're going to bring this up, both of them need to be a better base for the fort that Miami want to build in a back five. Stanislav, thank you, Alex. It's a great name. So I think that Quinteros will continue to be the starter, right? I think that he will continue to improve. He's still super young. He's got a ton of experience at his young age, especially on an international level. And I'm not doubting him like at all, like not even a little bit, because I'm not going to make the same mistake I did with Christian McCoon in 2021. It's not going to happen. I won't let myself get there. We know how much I was, ridiculing McCoon, and then I became his favorite. Like he became my favorite player, and I do this every time I score in FIFA. You know what I mean? Like there's just so much to be said for his development. I think Quinteros can, yeah, exactly. I think that Quinteros will obviously get there and probably has potential to be maybe even better than Christian McCoon. I think that there was more to be asked from him, and more that he could show to kind of win me over. And defensively, although they kept a clean sheet, I think Damian Lowe was really just the standout. McVay and Quinteros, like I said, there's stuff to be improved on, and they'll get there. They'll absolutely get there. But I'll let Alex chime in here.
Yeah, I think one quick point about McVay. I do think Noah Allen playing did play a part. I know Noah Allen's a great player and he'll grow into his role, but I think especially in the first half they were very hesitant to play to him. Just I think it's because he's new and maybe he's not really up to the pace yet. But Noah Allen did have a game, but yeah, I think they're a little hesitant to play into him just solely because he was a bit younger, maybe not as experienced. So I think that also played a role. When a guy like Breck Shea comes in, you know what you're gonna get. You can freely play to him, and he'll him and his long hair, he'll gallop up the left wing and get a cross in. So yeah, I think if Breck Shea starts this weekend, which he probably will, due to MLS Next Pro rules, and no Allen, yeah, we'll get into that soon. But yeah, I think Shea will start, and I think we're gonna see a different backline this weekend, especially with the new instructions for Quinteros to play into Yedlin. I think it'll look a bit different this Sunday. So
Yeah, and I kind of, the whole Noah Allen conversation has been a huge one over fans recently. Everyone's loved what the 17-year-old homegrown kid did, and as they should. I thought he had a great game, but the reason he was there, injuries on the left side of the pitch. And we talked about that, I think, in our like season preview. We talked about what they were going to do on the left side. Bring up Noah Allen was good, but there are still injuries happening at the moment. So as we go into this next game week 2 against Austin FC, I do kind of want to touch on the injuries, if that's okay with you guys. I was at training, like I said, on Wednesday, and we kind of got word from some, team spokespersons and also what I saw. So a couple things. The first thing I noticed when I was at training, Ryan Saylor and Kieran Gibbs off to the side doing individual work. Obviously, Ryan Saylor signed after the Ian Frey injury, but he was listed as out for the first game. He's back doing individual work, but I will say he is still listed as out for this week's matchup, despite doing individual work alongside Kieran Gibbs. Kieran Gibbs is listed as day to day, however, so that's an improvement on the out status, and I think we'll hear more by Friday which is tomorrow, depending on when you're listening to this. On Friday, we'll have more as we're recording on Thursday, and then later on, in the training, we saw Damian Lowe off to the side doing individual work, which seemed like recovery work, and that was something that kind of got a couple of the media members' eyes, and they were asked about it, and he said it was just a slight knock. We're going to reevaluate on Friday, but he should be good by Saturday. And then we'll find out on Friday if that's a possibility for him to be there. So at the moment, Duke Bryce Duke, who was doing individual work along with Edison Escona last week that I pointed out, Damian Lowe and Kieran Gibbs are all listed as day to day on the injury report, and the players that are listed as out, none of them, not many of these will be surprises, but Victor Ulloa, Nick Marsman, Jovan Jones, Ryan Saylor, and Robbie Robinson. So you have 4 players on the day to day list and 5 players on the out list, and I think that that's kind of going to play a part into obviously the Austin FC lineup. But Phil Neville says that too in the press conference. Some of these injuries may be longer than initially thought. A couple of them could be even weeks, but he didn't name specific players and specific injuries.
Where do you think that the depth of the defense, Alex, lies in terms of that? When you have a Damian Lowe who they probably will require to fill that LGP Figal sort of role, that like day in day out guy, and yet now all of a sudden there's the possibility of being off to the side, where he is Kieran Gibbs, who's coming back from injury, and uh, like the depth at the defense is a bit hazy at best, right?
Yeah, and I think I posed this question to you guys in the group chat. Will the formation change if Lowe is not able to go this weekend? And I think it's no. I think Mavika will just start, but yeah, it's. I think that's one of the main reasons why Ian Frey's injury was so painful. Not only is it, he's another year of his career is, hampered due to injury, but he was going to get significant playing time this season. And, Ryan Shaler is good, but Ian Frey, he looked, on his way to being a top player. So that's why it's so unfortunate. But yeah, I think yeah, I think I know Miami got rid of a lot of players, but there are also a couple of older players like Gibbs, who are a bit injury prone, and I know he's coming back from injury soon. And I think as soon as he starts, I think that left wing back spot will start to flourish a bit more. But yeah, it's unfortunate, but yeah, I think with Damian Lowe, I think Austin mentioned it that it is day to day, and Phil did say that he'll probably end up training today or tomorrow, one of the training sessions. Just to it's not as serious as we think. So I think Lowe will be good for the weekend. But yeah, it is. Hopefully, it's not a trend that continues. First game back of the season, going a full 90 minutes, your body does take a while to get accustomed to that. So yeah, if not, Mabika can start and he can do just as good of a job, it'll be okay. So yeah, tricky, but injuries they're just a part of the game, and next man up steps up basically.
Austin, when you look at the injury reports and everything that's going on, is there the ability to, we talk about Noah Allen and bringing people up. What are you thinking in terms of how you need to manage it this year and how it's going to work? Last year, so many times the hardship rule needed to be used again and again. Is it meet the old boss, meet the new boss, same as the old boss? Like, I mean, is this the same situation that is going to be happening in 2022?
Look, I hope not. I mean, that would be unfortunate, and I think that with the 5 players that are listed as out right now, none of them are really surprises. The Damian Lowe thing was a little bit of a surprise. However, it didn't seem that it phased Phil Neville or the coaching staff or anything like that. I think that Damian Lowe will be the starter on game day. But yeah, if you get down to the dog days of summer and you're seeing players drop down like flies as we do in MLS at points, yeah, it could be tough. I mean, there's what 5 center backs on this roster at the moment, and you're playing a three center back formation, so you're leaving yourself just 2 spots to come in and fill the void. And when you look at the possibility of not only injuries but suspensions as well, because we know Inter Miami's luck with yellow cards in the defense. That's another thing that you have to go on and think about. And maybe it calls for an acquisition in the middle of the year before the roster freeze. Maybe it calls for a trade within the league before the roster freeze. There are different avenues that I think that Miami could still be exploring. Obviously, this is not reporting. This is my opinion. Just need to put that out for the record. Miami could be exploring these options, and this is just me saying that because of what the discussion we're having now is. I think the depth is not necessarily worrying, but it's making me a little bit skeptical at the same time.
Guys, let's finish up with Austin. It is Austin game week, Austin in Austin, and we're going to have a lot of fun with that. The first trip for Inter Miami going over to Texas and the capital city of it, where they'll play. A 5-0 win over Cincinnati, impressive one. They capitalized on some opportunities. They probably should have conceded some other ones. Cecilio Dominguez looks like a heck of a striker for them, or a creator, I guess, for them. They've got some names that we're familiar with: Diego Fernandez, Nick Lima, Max Arruti, my favorite, Alex Ring, that I desperately wanted to come down here and thought would be a great partnership here. So they do have some names, but not a team that I necessarily I don't know how to say this. Not one that instokes fear. This is one of those. We always talk about how it's tough to win on the road in MLS. The way that Inter Miami held that game against Chicago, Phil said it after the game. That's the game that they lose last year, and he's pointed to. We've said it time and time again. The same number of wins as Nashville last year, and yet they needed to find a way to get points. And Nashville found a way to get points. They found a way to lose those games. They didn't lose the Chicago game. So this looks like one of those games that you can go after, that you can attack, that you can try and push the button a little harder on it. And so I guess just initial thoughts, I think that they'll probably go with that same 3-5-2 hybrid model. But your initial thoughts of what looks on paper as a 5-0 demonstrative win for Austin, but when you read between the lines, might present some opportunities for Inter Miami, Alex.
Yeah, I think it's not going to be Inter Miami's responsibility to play good-looking soccer. Austin are at home. They're the team that probably wants to take it to Miami. So, realistically, Miami just has to find a way to not lose and take their chances. Last week we saw Nashville go up to Seattle, basically with a smash and grab. Miami can do the same thing here with Austin FC, and at the end of the day, they get 3 points, and it doesn't really matter how they play because they're not at home. So, away games, and unless they're particularly difficult because of the travel and the heat in Texas as well. So, yeah, it's going to be on Austin's plate to go and entertain their fans, and Miami just needs to yeah, just there's a smash and grab available here, and especially, depending on the players that play. But all they do is need to defend compactly and take their chances, basically.
I think this is another game where uh, Inter Miami give up possession, especially in the first half. I think that the first thing that I noticed on the stat sheet was over 62% possession for Chicago. And then I'm looking at the final possession stat for Austin, and it is significantly higher than FC Cincinnati, over in the higher 50s. And that's, something that I think should be addressed. And I think that, again, it's just what Phil Neville has built. It's what Phil Neville has tried to do, and it's not like it's a bad thing that they're not controlling possession. Yeah, Austin FC had 57% possession, and at the end of the game between Inter Miami and Chicago finished with 59%. However, that number went down in the second half because Miami controlled the last 45 minutes. But anyway, I think that there's a lot of different avenues to explore when discussing tactically how Inter Miami should set up. Personally, I think there's only one change to the lineup, other than maybe Mo Adams. That could be a change, but I think there's only one change to the lineup, and it's Breck Shea for no Allen. That's it. I think everything else stays the same, and he tries to do the exact same thing against Chicago as he does with Austin. If they go down a goal, things might change really, really quickly. But if they are to hold a draw in going into halftime, second half could be Inter Miami's for their taking, as it was with Chicago. I see a similar identity. I see a similar game flow as I did against Chicago, as I think that we will see in Austin, Texas.
Alex, my question for you is basically the counterattack. You talked about it earlier. Is that the key to it, or can you find width? That DeAndre Yedlin versus Nick Lima matchup looks very enticing. Two very, similar style players, two very similar pacey players. Inter Miami has sort of tried to funnel that right to left style for most of preseason, I guess, and into game one, into week one. Can that work against him, or is this more route one?
Yeah, it can work. Especially if Higuain drops deep. I tweeted out a clip from Miami's game against Chicago, and it was, Higuain played a really gorgeous through ball. It took out all of Chicago's fans to DeAndre, who was on the overlap. So if they can do that against Austin, yeah, of course you exploit the width, and you can play with width and counterattack it at the same time. So it just really depends on the situation on the field. Soccer, it's not one set of tactics. There's, first 15 minutes you do this, the next 15 minutes you can do that, and the last 15 you do something else. So yeah, I think they will definitely look to exploit that, but I think in the first 10 minutes, they're going to defend compactly. They're going to look for the second ball, just try to play through that, and then once the game starts to open up a bit more, I think they're going to, play with more pace and width through the wings.
Austin, your first trip out there, how excited are you? Tell us about it.
Never been to Austin, Texas. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, no, I'm extremely excited. I've been to, I think, 3 other cities in Texas: El Paso, Dallas, whatever. Never Austin, but this should be really cool. I'm flying out Saturday night. I'll be there all day Sunday for when the game is. Come back Monday morning. I'm really, really excited to have some good barbecue. I had some recommendations already. That's other than the game, of course. I guess I have to say the game is the most important thing. I'm excited for the food and the downtown atmosphere of Austin. It should be really cool.
Let's be honest,
and then also
looking more forward to the food than you are the game.
maybe I listen. Some brisket could really do me right. Let me tell you, I'm very, very excited for that. Yeah, no, and it'll be cool. I think the Austin thing, I've wanted that for so long. So now that I finally get to go on this journey to Austin, Texas, expect a ton of pictures and everything like that, because the Austin little like corny thing is not going to stop. It is going to continue the entire time that I'm there. I can't wait to tell everybody while I'm there who I meet that my name is Austin. It'll be amazing. No, but it should be a great time. I've heard really good things about Q2 Stadium and the Austin FC fans. Excited to experience that. Whether if I can or not from the press box, we'll find out. But yeah, I'm excited, and I think it should be a really good trip. And I like when Inter Miami get to travel to away opponents that they have not played before, because it gives us a new memory, whether we're watching it from home or we're actually there in attendance. I think it's really cool. Something, that the beauty of a new team in MLS has. And I think that that's awesome. And I can't wait to experience it. Yeah. And we'll be documenting it too. So it'll be cool.
He is Austin, who will be in Austin, and we will never be tired of that joke, no matter how many times we roll our eyes over the course of this weekend. For Austin Robillard, she is Alex Winley, and our producer Andres. I am Ian Hess. This is the Heron Outlet. Please make sure you subscribe, like, share, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, and we will be back here for the Heron Outlet this time next week.